In today's video, I'm going to share with you part 2 of my haul of books that I picked up at the Hot Comics and Collectibles Warehouse Blowout Sale, where they were selling thousands of single issues for just 25 cents a piece. And in today's haul, you're going to see some copper and 90s era runs that I was able to build out, a fun Batman key, and then a variety of X-Men limited series that I happened to come across that I'd never seen or heard of before. Check it out. Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name's Chris, and this is Northgarden Comics. So today we've got part 2 of my massive haul from the Hot Comics and Collectibles Warehouse Blowout Sale, where they sold thousands and thousands of single issues for just 25 cents a piece. They've done this a few times now. First couple times were as a sidewalk sale, and now it's grown to the point where they've rented out a space across the street. So it's kind of an empty retail space, but you go in and they're able to fill the entire inside of that with long boxes of these single issues. They also did a bunch of deals on trade paperbacks and omnibus editions and pop figures and other toys as well. But my focus was really around these 25-cent back issues. And I've really enjoyed going to these sales now over the last 3 years or so, just because it's an amazing opportunity to fill in runs primarily of titles that I'm working on, but then also find things like limited series and keys and just odds and ends of fun comics. I mean, it's hard to argue with 25-cent comics. I always manage to find something, and I found a lot of somethings at this particular sale, and that's why this video had to be, or this haul, had to be broken up into multiple videos. You heard me say before, this is part 2. If this is the first video you're seeing, that's totally fine. I'm going to treat each of these as standalone hauls, but I will also link to the other videos that have been published so far down below in the description. So if you want to go back later and watch the other part or parts of this haul, you can do so. But for now, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the books that I've got to share with you. Kicking things off here, I found a great bunch of Batman issues. These all go back to the 80s, 90s era when I was early into comic book collecting. I was collecting and reading Batman and Detective Comics at that time, but I didn't have every issue. So one of the things that I'm trying to do now as a collecting goal is to go back and to fill in those gaps in my runs when I can do so, finding the books, in good condition and for cheap. And the book you're seeing us start off with here is a really special find because this is a key. It's actually the only key in the Batman run that I found, but I was super excited to find this. This is Batman 457. This is the first appearance of Tim Drake as the new Robin. And I've wanted that, but never knew if I'd find it in a dollar bin. So imagine how excited I was when I found it, not for $1, but for 25 cents. Now, if you think that's exciting enough, just hold on to your hats because it gets more exciting. I got 2. And the reason I got this second one, you can even see there was a difference in price on the original sticker there. This one was selling for $5.50, this one for $12. I didn't know if there was any significant difference. Usually that can be just about the grade of the book, but these are both in really nice shape. So I had to look a little further at this $12 copy. And as I was going through, can't remember if I looked in Key Collector or if I went to, it may have just been in CLZ as I was trying to load this into my database, but I noticed there were a number of different variants for this book, one of which was called an Indicia variant, the index error. And so this copy, if you open this here and you look down at the bottom, you see where it says Batman, and normally it would say 457 for the issue number. This one, though, says 000. So that was an error in the index of this particular Batman issue. I give full credit to people who look that closely at their comic books. I never would have caught that in a million years if I had this issue. Maybe, if I could have bought this issue back when it came out, I never would have paid attention to that. So kudos to you, really attentive detailed-oriented people for finding things like that. So I don't know that adds any intrinsic value to it. It's just kind of a fun little fact about that makes it an error book. So I did grab one of each. So amazing to find one, but now I have 2 copies of that key in issue 457. So great way to start off this portion of the haul, but there's a lot more Batman where that came from. As we continued on through here, some of the other books that I was trying to get and found, they had 459, 460, and I'll just kind of go through. I won't call out all the numbers as we go through here. I love the Breyfogle art on interiors and when he does these covers. And because these all came from that time when I was early into collecting, it's just such a nostalgia around seeing these covers. I didn't recall this cover though. I'm still trying to figure this one out. That almost looks like it's a 3D model that it looks like a photo cover. I think that is. Yeah, just a model. But that was pretty different. I didn't recall seeing that years ago. I'm gonna pick up here, 483. So the era that I'm really trying to work on is kind of the 400s. I started probably just before the Death in the Family story, and is where my collection started originally. And then it goes through probably about 550 is where I was collecting until. I did get 2 copies of this 493 because they had a newsstand and a direct edition of that, and both are first printings. And there's still a few holes in this Nightfall story that I'm trying to fill in. Jumping ahead here, we get into 529. This is during the era where Kelly Jones was doing the pencils, and that was probably the height of my Batman collecting. And I really get nostalgic when I see his art on Batman. It's a very different kind of a style, and maybe it gets some mixed reactions, but I really like it. The last one I found is this issue 555. Let's move these out of the way. 555 there. I just think that's a great cover. So I like Kelly Jones' take on this. He didn't do the interior pencils. I think his run ended around 552. But I'd like to find out all the covers that he did on Batman as well and add those to my collection. So great progress there at 25 cents a piece on that early Batman run that I'm working on, or early to me Batman run. Here we've got one issue from this 6-part limited series, Eternals. This one was done by Neil Gaiman and John Romita Jr. I would love to find the John Romita Jr. variants for these. Haven't found one yet. I think this is the 2nd issue from this series that I found. I forget what the first, it might be like issue 5 is the first one I found. I don't remember, something random, but I'll wait till I get all 6 and then read the whole story anyway, so it doesn't matter if they're in order or not. I found that one. And that's another thing I'll say about a sale like this, this sale, the books are all in random order. They are bagged and boarded for the most part, but not in any title order or issue order. So if you can find runs like the Batman, those were all together, but then you find these one-off books like this as well. So you got to take your time, look through every box, look through every comic slowly, because you could find the issue you're looking for tucked between 2 completely unrelated issues of other things. So great when you can find even these individual issues to help build out stories. This was a fun find. X-Men Worlds Apart is a 4-part limited series that I never knew about until this year. I found part 3, I believe, at a sale earlier this year. And my tendency with the X-Men is if I find a limited series that I haven't heard of or seen before, I'm probably going to pick it up when it's a 25-cent book, just because I love the X-Men so much. And it's just fun to find all these different, I hesitate to say oddball, because they're not oddball, but there were so many limited series over the decades done for the X-Men, starting in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, that I know I haven't even heard of all of them. So it's just fun when you can find some of these things that are less talked about and less known. And this was a nice find too, because look at that. It's a nice J. Scott Campbell cover on issue number 1. Then they had on the back here, there's issue number 2. And then they had issue number 4 as well. So I was able to complete this entire limited series that clearly focuses on Storm, though I don't know what's going on in the rest of the story, but looking forward now to being able to read that in its entirety. Here we've got another issue from another 4-part limited series, Silver Surfer Warlock Resurrection. This was a series from the 90s. Was this? I forget who the creative team is on this. Let's see if I can get this open. You ever have these old bags and after so many years, the tape just tears when you open it? This is Jim Starlin, both writer and penciler. So 4-part limited series from the 90s. And I found part 1 I found earlier this year. Not surprisingly, at an earlier 25-cent sale hosted by Hot Comics, one they did back on Free Comic Book Day. Didn't find issue 4 at that time. Maybe it was there and I missed it. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe they had fresh inventory they were putting out for this new sale. But now I also have issue 4. I've got the bookends of this series, so now I have to go and still find issues 2 and 3. This was just a fun grab. X-Force Annual number 2 from 1993. I love these square-bound annuals from the late 80s, early 90s. And so when I see those for 25 cents, that's an easy pickup. Again, because this late 80s, early 90s period was when I was really early on and kind of really getting my momentum going as a comic book collector and just buying tons of things. So X-Force Annual 2 was a good find. I was collecting X-Force, the ongoing series, for a while when it first came out. So that's a nice little addition. And in one of the future parts of this haul, I have a handful more of this type of annual from this time period that I picked up. And one of the cool things about these annuals, I don't know what story this annual ties into, if any, but annuals in the late 80s and into the 90s across a lot of the Marvel titles would tell multi-part stories to get you to buy the different annuals for the different characters. You get part 1 in maybe X-Force, part 2 in X-Men, part 3 in X-Factor, that type of thing. So that way you kind of read around and collect that story that way. So that's another fun way to collect these annuals, just to get those stories that are contained to those annuals. Like I said, though, I don't know if this particular one is something like that. It doesn't look like it because it doesn't have any kind of story treatment up here indicating it's part of a larger story, but still fun to find. Come back to Batman for one issue here, this time Detective Comics. Same story here, just trying to fill in some holes from my collection from back at this time period. This is issue 672, which was from March of 94. And I was collecting actively until 95, maybe early part of 96 is when I kind of faded away, and then had a little bit of a sabbatical from collecting for a few years there before I got back into it in the early 2000s. Picked up a few issues from this Astonishing X-Men run. Wasn't looking for any. I actually have the early portion of this volume. A while back, I had heard about and collected the Joss Whedon, John Cassaday run from Astonishing X-Men, and that's like the first 24 issues and then a giant size issue, but I hadn't been trying to collect any of the other issues in this volume. This might be one that I'll continue to piece together if I can find the books in good condition, and especially at a price like a quarter, but we'll see. Today I just grabbed a few issues that they had. This great Art Adams cover on number 43, and this one is the one that caught my eye first because Art Adams has been doing variants on current Marvel books of late as well. I think I'm expecting in my next DCBS order, for example, an Art Adams cover on New Mutants. I forget which issue, but he's doing a bunch of different variants right now that are very similar in style to this. But so that was a fun find there in issue 43. There's issue 44 with Storm and Cyclops. Another cool cover on issue 47, and then they had issue 52. So we'll see how it goes with the rest of Astonishing X-Men. Likely it'll be only if I find them at future like quarter sales and if they're in good condition, and then I'll probably pick them up, but not actively pursuing this volume otherwise. Coming back to another X-Men limited series. This is another one that I had never heard of before, but I love the character of Cyclops. He's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, X-Men character. Even dressed up as him in high school many moons ago, but had never heard of this 4-part limited series. And so they had issues 3, and if I can pick it up, and issue 4. So still need issues 1 and 2 at this point, but glad to get those. Speaking of X-Men limited series, yet another one. See what I mean? I'd never heard of any of these, and then you come across so many different ones. But this is X-Men to Serve and Protect, another 4-parter. This was from the what is it? The Heroic Age? It was around 2011 is when this came out. Don't know anything about the story here. I know the X-Men are in San Francisco at the time. I don't know anything else about what's going on in the story, but I figured I would get these because they had issue 2 of 4 and 4 of 4. Never heard of them before, never seen them before, so it could be a while before I find the other 2 issues, but there's so much fun just in the hunt itself. So I'll continue to hunt down those 2 missing issues so I can have the whole thing. Getting close to the end here. Only 2 more books to go. Here is a crossover between Image's Gen 13 and Marvel's Generation X. This is actually a one-shot, but there's like 6 different variants of this one-shot. And this is fun, not just because of the properties. I never really read Gen 13 at all, but Generation X I did when it first came out. But this is a fun crossover. The interior art is done by Art Adams again, so that was a fun find. And then I think this is my second copy, but I have 2 different covers now. The first cover I think is just the normal Art Adams cover, but this is a J. Scott Campbell cover. So another fun addition. And then one last book, we'll pop back to the Bronze Age for this one. We've got an issue of ROM, number 18. Nothing significant about this book from a key perspective, but that's a really cool X-Men cover done by Frank Miller. The one particular ROM issue I really want is that second appearance, or the tied for second appearance of Rogue, was at issue 32, but issue 18 is a great find as well for 25 cents. Again, cover by, but a very cool cover for a quarter. All right, that's going to do it for me, and that's going to wrap up part 2 of this haul of 25-cent books that came from the Hot Comics and Collectibles Warehouse Blowout Sale. I do hope you saw something that you liked, and remember, if you want to go back and see some of the other parts that have already been published on this haul, check out the links below. But how about you? How have things been going for you recently in your own comic book adventures? Any runs you're building out? Any fun keys that you've been able to find? Let me know down below. Now, if you're not quite ready for the YouTube fun to stop, I have hand-selected a couple videos here for you to check out. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.